Yesterday, Jeremy Clarkson locked the doors of the Farmer's Dog. No warning. No post on the website. Shut on what should have been a packed Saturday. Hundreds of diners with confirmed bookings expecting to walk in. The internet did what the internet always does. It assumed collapse. The pub everyone said was bleeding cash. The pub Clarkson himself admitted turns 100 quid into 94. The pub propping up 146 jobs in a single Oxfordshire village without ever posting a quarterly profit. Finally dead. The celebrity vanity project, finished. Thanks for coming, good night, the dream is over. Except none of that is true. Not a single word of it. And what is interesting is not just that the internet got it wrong. What is interesting is how quickly everyone got it wrong. Within 4 hours of the closure being spotted, 3 national newspapers had already drafted headlines. 2 pub industry newsletters sent out breaking alerts. A hospitality analyst went on BBC Radio 4 and said, and I am paraphrasing here, that this was the inevitable conclusion of a business built on ego rather than economics. Nobody picked up the phone. Nobody checked the filings. Nobody asked the basic question that any first-year business student would ask, which is, if this place was truly dying, why were there still hundreds of people on the waiting list the week it closed? Here is what actually happened. Clarkson shut the pub for one day to throw a party for his entire team. His own words, posted publicly, called them a wonderful group of people who had earned it. And that one detail, a money-losing pub that can somehow afford to go dark on a Saturday and celebrate its own staff, forces the question that the mainstream press has refused to seriously ask since the Farmer's Dog first opened in August 2024. How does a pub that loses money while fully booked actually survive? The answer, buried in the financial architecture that has slowly emerged through Companies House filings, is simple. The Farmer's Dog is not a pub. It never was. Think about what it actually takes to close a fully booked Saturday in hospitality. You are not just turning away covers. You are canceling reservations that people made weeks in advance. You are compensating staff for a shift they expected. You are absorbing the revenue loss on what is statistically your highest earning day of the week. Most pub operators in Britain would rather work through a family bereavement than voluntarily close on a Saturday. The fact that Clarkson did it, casually, publicly, without apparent financial panic, tells you more about the underlying health of this operation than any quarterly filing ever could. Start with the number Clarkson handed the world himself. The Farmer's Dog recorded a pre-tax loss of over £8,000 in its first trading quarter. Every hospitality journalist in the country ran that figure. Every pub trade publication quoted it. Clarkson's own line, a brilliant way of turning 100 quid into about 94, became the defining statement about what the place was doing financially. Here is the part none of those articles bothered to explain. The £8,000 loss is accurate. It is also completely beside the point. The Farmer's Dog seats roughly 200 covers on a busy day. British produce throughout. No Coca-Cola, no imported ketchup, no coffee from outside the UK, no avocado. The commitment to sourcing everything domestically is total, deliberate, and expensive. Food revenue on a strong week might reach £40,000. Premium British-only ingredients eat the bulk of that. A full kitchen and front-of-house team eat the rest. The food operation at the Farmer's Dog does lose money. Clarkson was not being dishonest. He was describing one arm of a multi-part machine as though it were the whole thing. And the press took him at his word, because the press was not watching what was happening at the bar. What makes that misdirection so effective is that it was entirely voluntary. Clarkson did not have to say anything. He chose to go public with the loss figure. He chose to make the 94 quid line quotable. He handed journalists the narrative they wanted, and they ran with it without looking further. In media terms, that is not bad luck. That is control. Whether he intended it that way or not, the result was that for the better part of a year, the dominant public story about the Farmer's Dog was that it was struggling. Nobody was looking too closely at a business that was supposedly failing. And while nobody was looking, the bar kept pouring. In its first year of trading, the Farmer's Dog sold over 500,000 pints of Hawkstone lager. 500,000 pints at £6.50 each. That is £3.25 million in beer revenue from a single site. But the figure that changes the entire picture is not the revenue, it is the margin. When a customer buys Hawkstone at a Tesco, Clarkson receives a wholesale cut, perhaps £1 per unit after the supermarket, the distributor, and the supply chain take their share. When a customer buys Hawkstone at the Farmer's Dog, Clarkson is the wholesaler, the distributor, and the retailer at once. He keeps every layer of margin, roughly £4.50 per pint. 450 multiplied by 500,000 pints is £2.25 million in profit from one product at one location. To put that in terms that make it land properly, that is more than most British gastropubs generate in total revenue, let alone profit. And Clarkson is doing it from a single tap, in a single room, in a village most people outside Oxfordshire had never heard of before 2021. The economics of vertical integration in alcohol are not new. Brewery taprooms have understood this for years. What Clarkson did was apply that logic at scale, attach it to a nationally recognized brand, and then point every journalist in Britain at the food losses, so nobody noticed the bar was essentially printing money. Hawkstone itself is worth understanding separately from the pub. Clarkson co-founded the brand in 2021 with a simple brief lager made from barley and hops grown on his own farm. The branding was never subtle. The marketing was Clarkson's television personality, bottled and carbonated. But the product itself held up. Independent reviews were solid. Distribution into major supermarkets came faster than most craft breweries achieve in a decade. By the time the Farmer's Dog opened, Hawkstone already had national name recognition and a loyal consumer base. The pub did not create the demand for Hawkstone. It concentrated it. 250,000 people a year, many of whom already bought Hawkstone at a supermarket, now buying it at the source, at full retail plus hospitality margin, in a room that made them feel connected to where it came from. That is not a pub selling beer. That is a brand experience with a till at the end of it. The food that lost £8,000 is not the business. The food is the reason 250,000 people each year make the trip to a roundabout on the A40 in West Oxfordshire, queue weeks for a reservation, and drink Hawkstone at the bar while they wait. Clarkson's own confession about the 94 quid is the most effective piece of misdirection in British hospitality history, and it landed perfectly. What has since become clear from examining the full operation at the Astall Barrow roundabout is that most people covering this story have been staring at the wrong building entirely. The pub is one component of what actually exists on that site. Alongside it, permanently pitched on the same grounds, stands the Grand Tour tent, the marquee that spent years circling the globe as the backdrop for Clarkson's Amazon motoring show, now fixed in Oxfordshire. Around that tent, 3 separate businesses run simultaneously. The Farmer's Puppy, an outdoor kitchen feeding customers who cannot secure a table inside, faster turnover, simpler dishes, lower cost per cover, and capturing spend from visitors who would otherwise walk away from the site without eating. Every portion sold through the Farmer's Puppy is revenue that simply would not have existed before the tent arrived. On a busy summer weekend, the queue for the Farmer's Puppy stretches longer than the queue for the main restaurant. The people standing in that queue drove to Chipping Norton. They came because of Clarkson. They are already bought in, and now they are spending money on a transaction that costs a fraction of a sit-down cover to service. That is not overflow management. That is a second revenue stream that runs itself. Hops and chops, a butcher's counter. If you eat British beef inside the Farmer's Dog and want to take a cut home, you buy it on the way out. Clarkson collects the retail sale that his own restaurant just manufactured the desire for. Most restaurants cannot do this. They feed you and you leave. Clarkson constructed a route from the dining room to the meat counter on the same piece of land. The genius of hops and chops is not the margin on the meat, although the margin is solid. The genius is the psychology. You have just spent 90 minutes eating the best British beef you have had in years. The chef explained where it came from. The server told you the name of the farm. And now, on the way to your car, there is a counter selling exactly that beef to take home. The conversion rate on that walk-past sale is not something any supermarket meat aisle can replicate, because no supermarket just spent 90 minutes making you fall in love with the product first. And the diddly-squat farm shop outlet, merchandise, Hawkstone products, local produce. A 25-pound t-shirt costs perhaps £4 to produce. The 21-pound margin on each item sold through that outlet requires no kitchen, no chef, and no hygiene rating. More importantly, every item that leaves that outlet is a walking advertisement. The person wearing a diddly-squat hoodie on the tube in London is doing marketing work that no agency could price accurately. You cannot buy that kind of organic brand visibility. You can only build it by creating something people genuinely want to be associated with. And Clarkson, whatever you think of him politically or professionally, has spent 30 years building exactly that kind of tribal loyalty. Sources with knowledge of the operation have confirmed that the 146 people on Clarkson's payroll are not all working in a pub. They are staffing 3 businesses that happen to share a car park, with the pub anchoring the footfall that makes all 3 viable. 250,000 visitors a year. Not all of them get a table. Every single one of them can visit the tent. Here is the detail about the farmer's dog that sounds like an ideology but functions as a competitive moat. No imported ingredients. Ever. Not a single one. No Coca-Cola. No Heinz ketchup. No coffee. No black pepper from India. Clarkson sources it from Cornwall at 10 times the cost. No avocado. No olive oil. Nothing grown, reared, or produced outside the United Kingdom passes through those doors. That policy has a cost, a serious one. Cornish black pepper at 10 times the imported price is not a rounding error when you are running 200 covers a day. British-only coffee is not a quirky preference. It is a procurement challenge that most kitchens would solve in about 30 seconds by ordering from a standard wholesaler. Clarkson chose to make it harder, more expensive, and more complicated at every single point in the supply chain. And the result of that choice is that the farmer's dog became the only pub in Britain that cannot be replicated by throwing money at the problem. A national chain with 50 times the budget could not open a farmer's dog competitor tomorrow, because the sourcing relationships, the farming knowledge, and the personal credibility that make the policy believable all belong to one person and one farm. The customers who drove from London to eat British produce at Clarkson's pub did not come because it was affordable. They came because the supply chain is something they actually believe in. And that is something no national pub chain can replicate. Their procurement contracts, their centralized kitchens, their cost structures, all of it is built on global sourcing. They cannot go British only and remain what they are. Clarkson built the one thing large competitors cannot copy without dismantling themselves entirely. There is also something worth saying about what the British-only policy does to the customer's relationship with the price. When you sit down at the farmer's dog and order a burger, you are not comparing it to the McDonald's down the road. You are not benchmarking it against the Wetherspoons around the corner. You have already accepted, before you walked through the door, that this is a different kind of transaction. The sourcing policy reframes every price on the menu. It is not expensive. It is honest. And honest, in the current British food landscape, is a premium that a significant number of consumers are willing to pay without complaint. In a recent Telegraph interview, Jeremy Clarkson said something that passed without the attention it warranted. "I am done with business. I am not starting another business as long as I live. I don't understand it, and I'm not motivated by money. I just want a good Krasik." Read that alongside everything now documented about the farmer's dog's actual financial architecture. A man who claims not to understand business built a pub that employs 146 people in rural Oxfordshire, generates $2.25 million in Hawkstone profit from a single site, runs 3 separate businesses beneath one tent using temporary structure planning rules, captures retail demand it manufactures through a butcher's counter on the same grounds, draws 250,000 visitors annually to a building that sat abandoned for over a decade, and then closed it for a day to throw those 146 people a party. The Telegraph quote matters not because it reveals something cynical. It matters because it might be completely genuine. Clarkson built his career on doing things instinctively, loudly, and without much apparent concern for what the conventional wisdom said he should do. The same quality that made him television's most divisive presenter is exactly the quality that led him to open a pub with Cornish black pepper and no Coca-Cola in a village most people could not find on a map. He was not following a business plan. He was following a strong opinion, which is what he has done his entire career. The fact that the strong opinion happened to encode a genuinely brilliant business strategy is either extraordinary luck or proof that instinct, applied consistently and at scale, can produce outcomes that strategic planning cannot. "I don't understand business," from the man who assembled all of that in under 18 months, is either the most convincing display of false modesty in British television history, or it is the most genuinely Clarkson thing he has ever said. He built this on instinct, on stubbornness, on a belief in doing the exact opposite of what every industry consultant would recommend, and on an absolute refusal to pour a pint of anything that wasn't brewed in Britain. Here is what the staff party that closed the farmer's dog yesterday actually represents. A building that stood empty at an Oxfordshire roundabout for more than 10 years. That Clarkson purchased, refurbished, and reopened in August 2024 with a sourcing policy so commercially reckless that every analyst in British hospitality said it was doomed. That bled £8,000 in its opening quarter while fully booked. That has since pushed $2.25 million in Hawkstone profit through a tap set into a wall surrounded by British beef and Cornish black pepper. Yesterday it closed, not because the model collapsed, because 146 people who kept that building running through a summer heat wave, through a refrigeration crisis behind the butcher counter, through a planning dispute, through a reopening that saw hundreds queue for hours outside, those people apparently deserved a day off and a celebration. There is a version of this story where Clarkson is the villain, the celebrity who swept in, bought up a piece of rural Oxfordshire, turned it into a tourist attraction, and disrupted the quiet rhythm of a small community for the sake of a television project. That version exists, and it has been written, more than once, by columnists who have never visited. But the version that the numbers actually support is different. 146 jobs in a single Oxfordshire village is not a vanity project. It is the largest private employer many rural communities in England have seen arrive in a generation. The farmer's dog did not take something from that village. It gave it an economy. The mainstream press reported the closure and moved on. They missed the thing that makes the closure the story. A money-losing pub that can afford to shut for a Saturday and celebrate its entire workforce is not a money-losing pub. It is a pub where someone looked at the food numbers, shrugged, built 3 businesses around the one that actually generates cash, and then threw a party when the whole structure held together. Clarkson says he does not understand business. What he built says something else entirely. Drop in the comments if you visited the farmer's dog and had no idea the tent next door was operating as a completely separate business. Tell us where you are watching from, and let us know what we should look at next. See you in the next one.